For the last 25 years in teaching photography, I always broke photography into 3 methods of control that a photographer had to master. One was incident, which is everything to do with the control of light. Size of source, distance of source, types of source. Are they umbrellas? Are they boxes? Are they scrims? The way you create your light, which controls the quality of the specularity, the diffuse range, the shadow, the edge of the shadow, everything about creating contrast. Then there was a reflective control, which is everything to do with recording that contrast. Lenses, types of lenses, millimeters of lenses, medium format cameras, large format cameras, 4x5, movements on cameras, shine fluke, tilts, controls. And then there was films, types of films, ectochromes, kodochromes, warms, grainy films. Those are all reflective control. Anything to do with recording light after it was reflected. So you have incident control and reflective control, and that's what photographers mastered. Well, then now there's another control, and it's called post manipulation or post control. After the first 2 are done, which if you do well and you master and you perfect, then you have this immense control in post with the computer. And it is a tool, just as all the other tools are. It's a tool which you create with. It can be used as just production, to where you just run an image through, make an 8x10 of a high school senior, and print it out. Maybe a little bit of retouching. Then it can be what we're doing here today, where you create images that do not exist, that only exist in parts. And if you take all 3 and you master all 3, then you have the greatest degree of control. But I will tell you that post manipulation is the greatest control photographers have ever had. It's probably going to be their new horizon of opportunities for the next millennium. But without the understanding of the first 2, I had a photographer the other day say, well, maybe I should not really even go to photo school, I should just get into digital. Absolutely not. If you're going to be a photo imaging person, you got to learn photography, you got to learn lighting, you got to create your components properly, because a computer's not going to create anything for you. They're just going to put them together well. So you still have to become a master lighter. You still have to understand the reflective controls. Then if you put those 2 together, the third is seamless. It's very, very simple. But if you don't, if you do a poor job in the first 2, then all you're going to do is be fixing in the third one. You're just going to be utilizing the computer to fix what you should have done right the first time. So there is 3 steps of control. Up to about 7 years ago, there's only 2 steps. But now with post-manipulation, it's a whole different world, a whole different opportunity. But my concern is kind of almost what Steichen's concern was when the 35mm came in and they quit using speed graphics back in the 40s. He said that 35mm cameras made photographers into bums and bums into photographers. And in a certain way, computers will do a certain thing to our industry. It will bring a lot of people in that will not discipline themselves in the front end. But the real competitive opportunity is if you stay a master photographer, you stay disciplined to the ability to record an image, then the computer will aid you in creating completely new, capable visions. But if you choose to ignore photography, then all the computer's going to do is be fixing what you should have done to begin with. One thing about the digital opportunity, you might say, is that if you do have a downtime, if it is slow, and in portrait wedding business, typically between the months of late December all the way through to June, they are slow. Seniors haven't started up, weddings haven't started up, but yet they still have all that equipment. They still have the lights, the studios. And if you have the ability to be digital, which most photographers eventually in the next 5 years will, there's an opportunity to produce what we call stock imaging, to where you can take your skill as a photographer, your room as a studio, your building, your overhead, you might say, and turn it into something in the way of stock images that will continually pay the rent. And it can be caricatures, it can be images that are used as metaphor images in articles such as in Fortune or Forbes magazine. When they talk about something in the way of business or business strategy, they usually like to have some form of metaphor picture in there, which is usually a composited. And people are becoming very used to seeing compositely digital images, you might say. So it is a business opportunity. It's got to be done by photographers. The last 20 years, most of those images were created by a relationship between photographers and then the digital artists. Big emphasis on the digital artists because they were the only ones that had the powerful enough machines to do it. But with Macintoshes running at 400 megahertz and storage down to the price it is and RAM being down to the price it is, in the next several years, probably in the next 5 years, portrait wedding photographers will have the power in their business to be able to shoot and put together images of the res quality or the imaging quality enough for publication, anywhere between a 12 to 40 megabyte file, or at least a large enough file to make a new 35mm film, if those magazines still require that. I believe probably in the next 5 years, most magazines that are looking for stock images are going to require files and not new film. Right now, most magazines require film because they're not set up. Color sync technology, color accuracy is not good enough, and one reason they want a piece of film from the stock agency is so they have some form of proof. And that's still a big thing. Until soft proofing or monitor proofing is a reality, which is approaching it, but until we have the ability to be guaranteed what an image is supposed to look like, people still want some form of hard copy. So that's why a lot of magazines will say, yes, I like the image, I want to use that as stock image, send me a chrome. And the funny part about it is they get that transparency or that piece of film, and the first thing they do is they have to digitize it and separate it again. But why they want it is they want some form of proof of what it's supposed to look like, because you can send an image, especially a digital image, to an agency, and they can reproduce it 5 different densities because they have no idea what it was supposed to look like. I have that problem whenever I do articles that have digital images in it. I always have to send them a proof, usually an Epson proof, not so much for color per se, but really for brightness and the accuracy of how bright I want it to be printed, because 9 times out of 10 they'll print it down. Their eyes are a little different than mine, but so I have a certain way I want them to reproduce it. So what you're going to see in the next 10 years, 5 years throughout this industry is photographers picking up additional income. There's nothing wrong with having 10 to 15 to 20 to 30 images in some form of stock agency book that magazines are using instead of we'll call assignment photography. There's no reason that you cannot produce the composite them, put them together, and be making that continual revenue in your off times or even in your good times. But again, when you're sitting in your studio between the months of December to January, or December to June, trying to figure out what to do, remember there's this huge industry out there which is looking for stock images on characters, very clever images, that you have all the equipment, all the ability, the talent to produce. One of the most important things in shooting stock, at least what this one is to have the right character models. Fortunately, I work with a character, Tim Whitehouse, and he can be a man of 1,000 faces. This particular one was the kind of the Bandino look, very good in the way of the metaphor of money being robbed, anything to do with finances, which lots of stocks looking for. Simple shoot, very, very large light source in very close to create a non-directional, non-strobe effect, look like just a very natural type of light coming in with a very hard light blowing out of the detail. Now, a lot of people will argue that, well, you're losing detail of that brightness. I want to. When you're out in the sunlight like that, you do get a pure white highlight. So I'm looking for that whiteness. So that's how it was lit. One strobe as the main, very close, exposing for that. One edge lighting, creating a very crisp, to create a kind of a sunlit effect. And then shot on a neutral background. Now, if I wanted to work with some form of range dropout, or if I want to use some form of wand selection, I probably would have used a colored background back there, but I normally will work with a fairly simple matte tool. I like to blend my backgrounds away with just using a matte selection and a paintbrush, and I just like to brush them away. I'm not a big fan of using selection tools. Some people do, I don't. Once the background's been erased away, then I will drop behind it any type of background I want. In this case, we went outside and photographed the sky, and we just wanted to get a surly clouds, because once the cloud's in there, I can do really whatever I want in Photoshop in creating their warmness, the time of day, directional light. I can bring in a starburst filter if I want to create a sun flare effect, a lens flare effect, which is in Photoshop. There's a whole host of things, but that whole idea of this photographer, not this photographer, this Bandino, which could be a photographer, smirking, kind of a low angle arm spread. The camera I'm working with utilizes 35mm lenses, so we zoomed it back to the wide to create that kind of ominous look down to it with the sky in the background. And when you have parts of images like that, because if I wanted to, I could have taken them outside and done all this just outdoors, but I didn't have the ability then to interchange backgrounds, change the background colors. So I try to keep all of my components independent from each other to have as many variations on the theme, because over a long period of shooting in stock, you'll compile lots of little parts which can be used in lots of different ways. It's not just for this one. I mean, those are now in a file to where they can be called up and put together at any given time we want.